You're listening to the 12 Days of Crusademas 2024, brought to you by the Longbox Crusade.
I'm so sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen, but 4 dukes a duking.
Hello and welcome to the 4th day of the 12 Days of Crusademas for 2024, brought to you by the Longbox Crusade. The 12 Days of Crusademas is our gift to the podcast community to celebrate the holiday season. And we're celebrating this joyous season by sharing with you some comic book titles that may have gotten by you in the past. Each day of the 12 Days of Crusademas will bring you a hidden gem of a comic series, brought to you by either one of our Holly Jolly co-hosts or one of our podcast celebrity guests, until we get all the way to December 25th, Christmas Day. I'm your host for this 4th day of Crusademas, Pat DJ Christatos Kringle. Oh, oh, oh. Ooh, that was a low ho. The low ho pro.
Back on mute.
And here are the 3 of the 4 calling birds, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, joining me for today's unwrapping. We'll start with Huey, and that's Jared Albrick, a.k.a. Death Probe.
Hey, Pat. I just came in. Ooh, it's cold outside. I came in. I was hanging decorations.
Really?
Over at the Fire and Water Podcast Studios. And it's looking really good over there. I just got back from that. And I want to ask you a question, Pat.
Sure.
How do you know when Santa is driving the sleigh in reverse?
He goes, oh.
Shut up, Jason. I asked Pat.
I figured it out.
Let me guess. He goes, oh.
Crusademas and all you.
That was so nice. I'm glad we got that one. I love it when we get when you get the joke. I hate
the show. I hate Crusademas. I hate you.
And I'm
humbug.
Yeah.
Jared, that joke gets around like a record.
A record.
You get it right? Oh. Okay. Oh, I'm going on mute again.
All right. Thanks for helping me out, though. You gave the joke a second life there.
Let's go ahead and talk to Dewey, which is Jason Albrick, a.k.a. the Christmas Weasel.
Guys, I'm getting a little bit nervous. It's, we're getting close to Crusademas. Jared is already helping the Fire and Water folks hang the decorations. We haven't got started.
I know.
I haven't seen Mary Jane since the end of the last Christmas party. Does anybody have any idea where she is? Because she is what brings this whole thing together. We don't have her. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we'll have a party.
I've been watching that show Cops. That's where I should look out for, but I have not seen her yet.
Same, I hadn't seen her on there. I don't know. I guess maybe detox centers. She was looking pretty rough after the end of that last Christmas party. Remember when Ruth spiked the punch? And then
that Ruth.
Yeah, and then Mary Jane just kind of, she got like that strap and hung the punch bowl just like around her neck and was just drinking from it like a horse from a trough.
Good times.
Those were good times.
They were. They definitely were. I haven't seen her around either. I can get a hold of Clinton and see if he's maybe seen her, rummaging around the basement at all, but see if we can find her.
That's a deadly combination. If that's happening, we need to put a stop to that right now.
We do. We'll get it all figured out. We'll talk to HR, figure out what's happening, because if Clinton is not following the rules, there's going to be some policies that are broken, and we're going to have to talk to him about it. But speaking about talking to somebody about something, let's go ahead and talk to Louie of the 3 calling birds, and that is Delvin, the Dark Web, Christmas Web. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I happen to be outside decorating too. At Ruth and Darren's, and fantastic place, like frames everywhere, like they have like an entire wall for like Jared's artwork and everything. It's very nice because they brought me inside, had like warm cocoa. Like why don't we do anything like that over here, Pat? Does anyone here hang up decorations? Is that a thing that goes on?
Well, Devin, I'm glad you asked. We do Christmas decorations here, and usually it's been me for quite a long time now, and I am hoping to get that changed starting right now. So I'm going to go find Mary Jane. We're going to get her to get things figured out, and if things aren't going to be done, I'm going to talk to Laurel. It's going to become a whole HR action going on here, and we're going to get things squared away.
That sounds like a whole thing. Good luck with that.
Well,
to answer your question, Delvin, yes, I see decorations out here at LBC every year. Just assumed it was like elves.
Christmas Miracle, maybe? I mean, those things still happen, I'm pretty sure. Like, not just on 34th Street, but possibly at, the palatial, luxurious LBC headquarters. That's what I thought too, Jared.
It's like when I was a kid, I knew my parents were really Santa Claus, but as long as the presents ended up under the tree, I just didn't ask questions. That's kind of how I feel about these lights.
I see what you guys are doing, and I don't like it. I do not like it at all.
Crusademas, everyone's angry this Christmas.
Yes, see what happened is a humbug. We'll get it all squared away and straightened out. But before we do that, we need to talk to our guest who's here around the fireplace with hot cocoa in hand. Delvin, we do the hot cocoa. It's not just you bringing the chocolate fountain every year. We do the hot cocoa as well. So
I bring the chocolate fountain every year, baby.
I know. Yeah, I know you.
No,
not
right.
Just for Christmas anyway either. It's all around. And
sometimes Christmas comes more than once. You know what? Just keep going.
So speaking about the person hanging around with us around the fireplace, it is our podcaster and friend from the Firewater Podcast Network. It is Ryan Daly. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks for joining us for day 4 of Crusademas.
Thank you for having me on the best day of Crusademas. And may I say, this place looks very festive for this time of year. I, for one, am impressed by the level of commitment and the decorations that you have here.
Appreciate that, Ryan. That means a lot to me. It warms my heart.
And not for nothing, but Christmas Weasel was my favorite Rankin Bass special when I was growing up.
This is the best.
It was the best, yeah, the Christmas Weasel. I love that one, too. I like it when he puts one foot in front of the other, and then he just keeps walking around and going out that door. I love it. Speaking about loving it, though, Ryan, what do you have gift wrapped in that stocking?
Well, as the listeners heard me say during the singing intro, which I am obligated to say, otherwise, believe me, I would never come up with a phrase Dukes a duking by myself. It doesn't even follow the song, Pat. It's like they don't say geese a geesing. It's
Dukes a duking?
Anyway.
What about it? Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, for Dukes a duking, which means we are unwrapping Duke Issue 1. Duke Issue 1 was published by Skybound, which is an imprint of Image Comics on December 27th, 2023. This new miniseries, which explores and reinvents characters and concepts from Hasbro's G.I. Joe toy property, is set in Skybound's brand new Energon universe, a shared universe of stories told across several different comics, including Void Rivals by Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman, The Transformers, Cobra Commander, and 2 more upcoming G.I. Joe-related miniseries, Scarlet and Destro. Duke is written by Joshua Williamson, the author of several comics over at DC, and illustrated by Tom Riley, a veteran of several Marvel comics. Joshua Williamson also writes the Cobra Commander miniseries being published concurrently with Duke. Would you like to hear why I picked this one?
Why, Ryan? Yes, we would.
Well, I've got several reasons. The first one being obviously nostalgia, as it's well known and documented. G.I. Joe was one of my very first fandoms, first loves as a kid. Loved the toy property, grew up with those toys, grew up watching the cartoons. G.I. Joe comics were the very first comics I ever read, and became a huge lover of the original run by Marvel Comics and have continued reading some of those. Another reason I'm really excited for this current era of G.I. Joe comics that Skybound is publishing is they have found a really interesting and I think kind of a captivating way of tying the Transformers and G.I. Joe together. Now, these two properties both originating around the same time as Hasbro toy properties. They have a long history of being connected in the comics and now soon the movies. But I'll be honest, I never really liked that. I never really cared about the G.I. Joe Transformers crossovers. I always thought when you put the two of them together, it made G.I. Joe less special. So I never really cared to see these two particular flavors mixing. Until now, I think the current version that they're doing and the way they have brought these two properties together in the comics is pretty interesting. And I'm along for the ride for this current Energon universe that they're doing. And finally, one of the things that has really impressed me about these books so far, and I'm including Transformers and Cobra Commander along with Duke, is it's what I would consider a sophisticated and mature adaptation and telling of a toy comic in a way that doesn't feel like it's apologizing or ashamed of the source material.
I think that's nicely put, how you pulled that all together there.
So now I would turn it on you guys and ask if any of you have had you read Duke issue 1 prior to Crusademas. So Pat, have you read this one?
No, Ryan, I have not, and I'm glad you asked because it has been on my list to get to, so I'm glad you brought it, that I could start to dive into this universe.
Delvin, what about you?
I have not read any of the new G.I. Joe part of it, so as I'll get into, like, when it comes to my description of what I think about the book, I'll have more to say. But no, in short.
And now to guys who I know did grow up as G.I. Joe fans as well. Jared, had you read this one?
I have not. Nope. This is new to me. I'd heard about Skybound getting it. I heard good things, but I'm grumpy, and I only like comics from the 80s and 90s, so you forced me out of my comfort zone. Let's find out how it goes later on.
That's fantastic. And Jason?
I had not either. It's recent enough that I was able to find a copy the last time I went into the comic book store, so I was able to snag a copy and read it in preparation for this episode, but no, hadn't read it yet.
At the time the listeners are hearing this, this issue came out about 1 year ago, or just a little bit less than a year ago today. But at the time of recording, it's not too far along. And by the way, if I wasn't clear, Duke is a mini-series, so by the time they hear it, the mini-series will be concluded. So is Cobra Commander, and then they will be followed up by Destro and Scarlet, but those will probably be over too by the time we get around to Crusademas. I think they're all either 5 or 6 issue miniseries, I believe. Anyway, for a quick summary of this particular issue, Conrad Hauser is a real American hero, the quintessential man of action with all of the best qualities of a natural-born leader with none of the ambition. But right now, he's a shell of his former self, having witnessed the gruesome death of a friend at the giant metal hands of an alien robot. General Hawk hopes to bring Duke back in line and quash his tales of giant robot transformers. But Duke is determined to know and expose the truth, even if it means going against the government he has always served. 6 months later, Duke attends a meeting of conspiracy theorists at the home of Dr. Adele Burkhart. The doctor believes Duke's story, and even more, believes that the transformer he witnessed is part of a larger arms race for bleeding-edge military weapons technology, and the forefront of that race is Mars Industries. Duke sneaks into a Mars facility and sees the creation of several different high-tech weapons systems, but he's captured by Mercer and an army of Mars security guards. Destro, the secretive leader of Mars, orders his men to release Duke. When the hero returns to Dr. Burkhart's home, he finds the conspiracy theorists massacred and Dr. Burkhart on the brink of death. With her last ounce of strength, Burkhart gives Duke a cell phone with crucial information. Then she dies, and the house is promptly stormed by police SWAT team who waste no time before opening fire on Duke. Our man of action manages to escape, but now he's more determined than ever to expose this cover-up. And that's bad news for someone very high up in the Pentagon food chain, because General Hawk is ordered to put an immediate end to the Duke situation. Hawk knows there's only a few men in the world who can handle someone like Duke, so he recruits 2 other real American heroes, codenames Stalker and Rock and Roll. What did you guys think? Delvin, you mentioned beforehand that you had some other thoughts probably relating, because I imagine, are you reading the Transformers series?
Look at you with the segue, like a man who's podcasted before and whatnot. Yeah, I have read up to issue 5 of Transformers, and get the bleep ready, Jason. It is insane. Like right now, Optimus Prime has Megatron's arm, and it's like in every issue, like some Transformers getting wrecked, son. It's like, what in the world is going on? They are going to blows over there. Like, oh crap! I was not expecting that. So the action is like ridiculously good, and I promise I'm getting back to Duke here. There was a moment, I shared it with Jared via text. There was a moment where Optimus Prime had saved some humans, and to include Sparkplug Witwicky. And he asked, and Sparkplug, being a former veteran himself, asked Optimus Prime how long have they been at war. And it just showed like this montage, like this very brief montage in the background. And he just said very somberly, too long. And it was like, oh my God, like who told these dudes to cook like this? Because like going over to G.I. Joe and reading Duke, I'm sitting there, I was fascinated. Like I never, because I read the 80s series, and actually they talked about it a little bit, but like not this viscerally about how like maybe being a human being, seeing a plane transform into a freaking robot and kill one of your comrades would be traumatizing as all hell. That's just that detail alone is incredible. And it was incredible enough to send someone who is amazing as Duke is into a complete spiral. From being a complete like top of the list, like guy that everybody would want on their team to like, okay, we think this dude is a nut job. And he's not. He wasn't. He literally saw it. Like, in his stress disorder absolutely had valid roots. There's a ton, and I don't want to give it away, but I will say I thought the artwork was fantastic. I probably missed 98% of the G.I. Joe references since I didn't read the original Marvel series or anything subsequent, but the parts that I knew were enough where I'm just like, man, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall when they created this Energon universe, because they are on to something. It is great. It is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I co-sign that. And again, like I loved these properties in the 80s, and I have been burned by more recent reinventions and retellings of them, and some I have really gotten excited for, and some then kind of petered out and everything. So I went into this one with a lot of skepticism and hesitation about this new shared universe of books. But so far it's been killer, and it's exciting me in ways that I didn't even never would have conceived in ways they could have taken this. Jason, you've got the hardcover copy of Duke. You actually went out and bought the physical media. What did you think about this issue?
I thought the issue was really, really good. Delvin's enthusiasm has, pumped it up even more for me, to the point where I might actually go and try and find those Transformers issues and definitely keep following what's happening with Duke. I guess the one thing that I'll add that really stood out to me was there was an X-Files type vibe to it as well. I could definitely see kind of some parallels between Duke, who was this he is cut from the leadership mold. He's got all the gifts. He's extremely talented as a leader. He's at the pinnacle of his career. Then this one event occurs. And like Delvin said, seeing this jet turn into a robot and basically crush your good friend like a fly, and then have your government deny, that you saw what you saw. That spoke a lot to me of David Duchovny's character of Fox Mulder as a gifted FBI agent. It kind of goes into those fringy moments when he's going to these conspiracy theorists, and there's grains of truth, right? There's grains of truth, and he's trying to figure it out. So I really like that element of it as well. I'd say probably the one thing that I kind of missed that I'll take out on the score a little bit was I really missed kind of the Larry Hama, the military humor that was in the book. I think that's the one thing that's kind of missing a little bit, but not enough to really bring my score down on this book, as we'll see later.
Yeah, I mean, Larry has been writing G.I. Joe off and on for 40 years more or something like that, off and on. So he has a voice that a lot of people associate with G.I. Joe and find it very difficult to disassociate. And to read something that's not written by him. And I admit I have had that problem in the past too, which was another reason why I was skeptical going into this. I was like, I'm not sure if it's going to have the same. The other thing that I was skeptical about this was, for me, like, one of the things I love about G.I. Joe is the ensemble. The fact that it is a whole team with literally hundreds of characters that you can draw from and add to this thing. I don't really like it when it just focuses on one specific guy. Like, even if it's a beloved character like Snake Eyes, I don't want to hear just Snake Eyes adventures. So when they said it was just a Duke book, I'm like, okay, we'll see. But then it became obvious, okay, this isn't, I mean, it's not called G.I. Joe for a reason. At the time this story is being told, G.I. Joe does not exist. But we're seeing a progression. We're seeing these different miniseries develop. And they're taking a slow, long kind of approach so that they're like, we're not trying to compete with Larry Hama's G.I. Joe right away. We're taking our own path, and it's going to be a little bit more circuitous, and we're going to get there, but it's going to be fun along the way. So yeah, this one is interesting. It does kind of have more of a little bit of an X-Files feel for this first issue. Pat, what did you think?
Boy, it's so agreeing with both Delvin on the Transformer side of this, because we're going through Transformers, and the G.I. Joe side of this. I have a little bit better interest in this for that it's a Duke issue, because going through the Devil's Due run that Jared and I did, when we had that single issue of Duke, I was like, man, I want more of Duke and the man of,
which I was your guest on, by the way.
I was just thinking Ryan was the guy on that.
Yeah, I talked to you about that. That was the last time I talked to you guys was about Duke.
I'm waiting for Pat to say it.
Say what? Oh, well, I was going to start like that, but yeah, first of all, yeah, I just want to say, Duke, it had to be done. But I was hoping this was going to be something that was what I was looking for in the Duke story, like I want to say continuation, but a take on Duke. So, man, hats off to these guys. Like you said, Ryan, they really took things from all three medias of the G.I. Joe, the toys, the comics, and the cartoon, and really melded it together here. And I'm going to go back to Devil's Due, but with Josh Blaylock. And I think Josh opened that door to say, hey, we can take a little spin on this and give you something a little bit different here. And here, this team figured out a good formula for that to be done. And I hope it stays this way. Like you said, they're playing with the toys. They're bending it a little bit, but they're not going to break them. They're going to bend it a little bit and take it to an extreme where you might get a little, let's say the O-ring may get a little loose in there and wiggly, but they're going to figure it out. And I really enjoy
a different O-ring. It's not what you're thinking. I saw the look on your face.
But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. And there's so much to talk about in this. I'm looking forward and want to dig into more of these.
And piggybacking on that, because as I mentioned before, Joshua Williamson also writes the Cobra Commander miniseries that's also being published. And that is not what you would expect, especially if you're a longtime fan of the Larry Hama G.I. Joe comics. This universe's Cobra Commander is very different. He has a different backstory. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll have to find out. But that miniseries is a sci-fi horror book. It's not so whereas this is kind of like the conspiracy geopolitical action. Like, there's body horror, there's brutal elements of that Cobra Commander series, and it's fascinating for a whole different way, but equally good and shocking.
In this issue, there was a little snippet of a sneak peek of that Cobra Commander issue, and the minute I saw that, I read that, I'm like, oh man, I got to read this one too, and I'm like, this looks good and freaky. I haven't read it, so I'm feeling that they're going to get a little, of the Cobra Commander as a snake guy or something, maybe? I don't know.
We'll see. We'll find out.
But
he was a man.
Once a man.
Oh, man, this is so good, and I really enjoy it. And was it the mass device that Dr. Burkhart had when she showed? I'm like, oh, that looks like the mass device, but they didn't
she showed for one of the vehicles. Yeah, it was from the original animated miniseries, the mass device. Yep.
Yeah. So just the detail, like you said, is so amazing. So I'm gonna stop gushing. I'll let somebody else talk. Sorry.
All right, Jared, what did you think of the issue?
With all this positivity coming from Delvin and Jason and Pat, it really makes me wish I'd read it. But just guessing from the conversation, the context clues, I think it was good.
I should have seen that.
Yeah.
A mile away.
Everybody should have seen that.
I saw it.
Oh, Jared.
So yeah, this has been pretty cool. Like I said, I'm kind of grumpy, and I'm a lot like you, Ryan, when it comes to these sort of like reboots of G.I. Joe. I'm always skeptical because I'm always like, I like my old G.I. Joes, and but you know, Pat and I've learned or relearned that the Devils Do Run is excellent, and this really put me in mind of G.I. Joe Reloaded from Devils Do. Which was kind of their answer to the Marvel's Ultimate Universe. It was kind of a retelling with different vibes, and that's what this feels like. And I like that series. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. The biggest hill it had to climb in front of me was Duke. I've just never been a big Duke guy. Like he's like generic Joe, you know. I'm just like, okay, you know, whatever. I would have been very much more excited if it was called Stalker, you know, or Beachhead or something like that. But I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And they did a good job. The plus side of Duke is that he's a good sort of clean slate character that you can build almost anything around. And that's what they're doing. They're building a lot of cool things around him. So that was a plus one. Then they mentioned Dr. Burkhart, and I was like, oh, I see. Someone's showing off that they did their homework. And then I saw the Mass Device, and I was like, okay, all right. You watched it and you read it. I got it, you know, in a good way, in a very good way. I like the whole conspiracy theorist angle. You know, Duke is having to, you know, make allegiances with people that he would have probably written off as kooks, you know, 6 weeks ago, you know, and so his
shut your face, hippie.
Yeah, and like when he goes to the conspiracy theory party, almost all of the dialogue held by the other people are references to other comics or cartoons or things like that.
It was great. Tip of the cap to the artist. It's a very unique style that fits pretty well here. I like that. Of course, I caught the cover girl reference, but I was most excited at the end. As I'm getting to the end, I'm like, okay, I'm intrigued. The action is good. They're taking it seriously, kind of like Jason. The only thing I thought was like, is this too serious? Can we lighten up just a little bit? But then they won me back because they were like, oh, and here's Stalker and Rock and Roll. And I was like, oh, okay. Stalker, I'm a big fan. Not as big as Jason, but very big fan of Stalker. That's his number one Joe. And I was like, oh, they're bringing in Rock and Roll. And to kind of put in a dash of Rock and Roll made me happy too, because he's an OG Joe that maybe doesn't get a lot of limelight. I guess what I'm trying to say is it could have been very easy to go like, hey, here's Snake Eyes. You know, I think that's everyone's trick pony, right?
I thought that's what I thought. I was like, I'll turn the page and there'll be Snake Eyes.
You know?
The writer has said the hardest thing for him about writing these books is not putting 30 of his favorite characters in every page.
I can only imagine.
It's the restraint factor. It's just like, no, it's like, let's do one at a time and make their entrance really special.
And that's what
and like when you see Rock and Roll in issue 2, it's awesome. Like his intro, like when we actually see him, they had a nice little touch to his character, and it's fun.
Yeah, I get it, because it's so easy to go to the Snake Eyes well, or the Storm Shadow well, you know, those fan favorites, and it'll just make it that much more fun when they do arrive. So yeah, man, a good poll. Again, I'm always leery and suspicious because I'm a grumpy old man of modern comics, but man, I think you brought a real winner.
Speaking of the art, which you mentioned, there was just, and I like it, but I can't say too much about it. But there's one panel when he goes back to Dr. Burkhart's townhouse after when everybody is dead, and he sees her on the floor and she's kind of crawling to him. That particular panel, I think, looks just like the artist Sean Phillips, who works with Ed Brubaker on almost everything. They're like creative soulmates. But yeah, like there's something about the shading on her face and the way her hair looks. I was like, that could be a panel from Criminal or Fatale or one of the other books that those two have done together.
Yeah, the artist got a really unique style. I don't know if he does every bit of the art. It almost feels like he does, but if he doesn't, if he has a colorist, that guy deserves tip of the cap too, because the colors really help carry the art in this. But it might be him doing everything because it has that feel. At least it does. So that's a compliment either way to him or his colorist.
Yeah, the colorist is Jordi Belair, it says.
Oh, okay, good.
Jordi Belair is one of the best colorists in the biz too. He's
clearly.
He's fantastic. Now it's time for you guys to rate your interest in the series using the official Crusademas candy cane scale. On a scale of 1 to 12 candy canes, 12 being extremely interested and 1 being no interest at all, how many candy canes would you rate your interest in pursuing more Dukes-a-duking, if you could? Jared, what's your rating?
Oh, man. High. It's going to be high. Let's see. I think I'll lead off here with an 11 candy canes, 11 out of 12. I think it's very strong. I'm definitely interested in reading more. It's one of these things where, within a couple months or so, maybe they'll start popping up in those back issue. Well, hopefully it doesn't get too popular because it'll be really expensive. But
they've reprinted this issue like 5 times. So.
Okay, so what I need is some reprints in the cheap dollar bin, and I'm going to grab them all. But yeah, no, I would pick these up. In fact, let's be honest, there's a really good chance they're going to put these into trades. And there's a really good chance that Jared's going to pick up said trade. So yeah, I'm going to go with an 11. I'm going to lead us off strong and see if anybody wants to raise that bar.
Very cool. Jason?
Well, humor, I got to give it a 0. There wasn't anything laughable. It was kind of funny when Starscream just kind of smushed that dude like a bug, but we're not going to count that. So 0 there, but I'm going to give it full 3s for heart, spectacle, and art. So 3s across the board there, plus another 1 for your enthusiasm and knowledge. So I'll go with 10 Candy Kings.
Very cool. Good to hear. Pat?
I'm not going to be low like Jason is. I really enjoyed this one, and I'm going to raise that bar up to a 12. This really got me excited and interested in this new Energon universe. Like you said, I was kind of skeptical. Like, okay, let's see. Been burned on a few, or, G.I. Joe Scream talking about you. Been a little, burned like that. But I want to delve deeper, not only into the Joe, I want to read the Cobra Commander one, and I want to get into the Transformers one now too. So this definitely is a pull you in issue.
And Delvin?
My rating is an 11 in that, like, I knew Rock and Roll and Stalker were characters in G.I. Joe. And so, like, I am not the target audience for a G.I. Joe book. But the story was fantastic. It was so rooted in the earth where you almost could forget that, like, the reason why Duke had this penetrating PTSD that he has is because of a robot that was once a plane. It was that rooted. Like, you were sitting there like, good God, Energon Universe's U.S. government sucks. They're terrible. They didn't even check and see if man's needed help. And he was like the best of them. Like, come on, help the man out. So, like, I'm glad I can rant about it because it means I care about it. And like, and for me to have to care this much about a G.I. Joe book says a lot. And man, what they're doing with the Energon universe is, I'm glad that I got on the ground floor of this. I'm looking forward to it. They clearly have done their homework and figured out a way to make this work. And I'm looking forward to see the payoff.
Yeah, I would recommend all of them. Transformers, Duke, Cobra Commander. Also, the original one, Void Rivals, which was actually where all of these stories kind of come first. Like, that's Transformers springs out of Void Rivals in a way, and then Duke and Cobra Commander spring out of Transformers. So Void Rivals is the original one. It's not based on the 80s property. It's an original creation by Robert Kirkman. Honestly, I'll say a hit or miss for me, but I think Void Rivals is a hit. I'm really enjoying that one. I've only read the first 4 issues. I think that at the time of this recording, I think it's 7 now, so I need to catch up. But I'm enjoying that book too. Very different flavor. It kind of feels like an 80s action property, like has a little bit of a Thundercats or Silverhawks vibe. Nowhere near that aesthetic, but a little bit of that feeling. Yeah, I recommend all of these, but yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoyed this.
All right. Thank you, Ryan, for bringing this issue. I think we all quite enjoyed it all. And that will wrap up day 4 of the 12 Days of Crusademas. We'd love to hear from you if you're familiar with any of the comics that were covered here on the show, or if you gave one of the recommendations a try, let us know what you think about it. You can go to X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all at Longbox Crusade, or email us at contact@longboxcrusade.com. You can also leave us a voice message at 707-532-5269. That number is 707-532-LBOX.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Be sure to come back tomorrow to find out what the next gift is under the tree here at the festively decorated Longbox Crusade Studios. Thanks for having me, fellas. Until next time, DJ Christados, play me a Christmas jam.
Wickety, 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 whack.
Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory stream from heaven above, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior.
All songs, song clips, and characters discussed are copyright of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended. We are just fans that like to share our love of comics.
Outtakes.
Sell Bananas beats.
Let's go.
Jared, I've got that same neon microphone sign. Actually, it's on the floor next to me because I don't have a good place to hang it up right now. But
So you too have been on Temu.
It's called Temu.
So is it called Temu?
I don't know.
Christmas present. So.
So you too have a friend who's been on Temu.
Well, thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Thanks for having me back. It's been like 15 years, but
Mm-hmm.
they're always fun.
We've all grown a little older.
I kind of assumed you stopped doing Crusademas when you stopped asking me to be on it. So I just
Oh, we never stopped doing Crusademas. I mean, we literally never stopped doing Crusade.
you have to record it every month.
We don't. Oh, text from Delvin.
I am.
I am.
Oh man, that was